Hi, I'm live. Phew, I'm a bit early, so I'm gonna wait for like a minute or so before I begin with my talk. And for the people who would happen to be here already, I just want to say that I'm still kind of catching my breath because I had to run to be here in time as I was having a drink with my good friend Martino earlier, who just flew in from Firenze today. And so I had to catch a train and then do some shopping. So yeah, I arrived just in time. I'm very happy to be here. The shopping I did actually it's kind of like a funny story. I promised my host at the place where I'm staying that I would make a nice risotto for her when she returns from India. And so my good friend Martino, coming in from Florence, I asked him to bring me some Parmigiano and some risotto rice because I wasn't sure that I could find them here in Tokyo. And of course, he forgot. In his defense, it was a super crazy busy week for him. He had an amazing event at this place called Numero 20 in Florence. So I forgive him. But anyway, so I went out and I rushed to a big store to buy some risotto and to buy some cheese here for a ridiculous price. But hey, it's Tokyo, right? So that's what you have to expect, I guess. Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so let's get this thing going. I'm very excited to be here today. I am Joachim, co-founder of StepUpLabs. We are a coaching firm based on lifestyle design, and we help you to create the lifestyle you want, doing the thing you love. Basically, we help you create a better life for yourself. That's kind of our mission, to improve your life. Now, of course, as you maybe know, I am myself a location independent entrepreneur, which is a big part of what we're doing. And the advantage of being a location independent entrepreneur is that you can be wherever you want at any time. So right now I am in the fascinating city of Tokyo, which is really kind of amazing. I'm working and doing this for you from the other side of the planet, basically, because I assume most people listening now are probably in Europe. So today I want to talk to you about skill transferability and transparency, or how to unlock your hidden potential. And I think that's a very interesting and necessary talk, because a big problem that I perceive in many of the people we work with and the people who potentially will work with us is that they don't really believe that they have skills. They don't really believe that they have abilities for which they will be paid by others. And of course, believing that yourself, believing that you have something valuable to bring to someone else is crucial in developing any kind of business. So I want to say that this lecture that I'm going to give now, this talk, is basically a reworked version of a talk that I was invited to give at Freedom X Fest in Budapest earlier this year. And again, I want to express my gratitude for the wonderful team and the organization of Freedom X Fest for having me there and for actually asking me to speak specifically about music. I'm going to explain that at a conference for location independent entrepreneurs, creative people, and what they call freedompreneurs. So this talk is kind of also the result of that process that started in myself because of that question. Now, music, why music? Well, basically, when I started thinking about skills and how to unlock your hidden potential, it struck me that I kind of never connected my previous life as an artist, as a musician, as a performer, as a composer with what I'm doing now. And so this talk is actually about that a lot. Basically, I'm going to take myself as an example for what I'm trying to say. And that means that you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to go back into my background for a bit. I'm going to talk about myself and my evolution and how I got to the point where I am now. And then in the second part, I'm going to talk about how this can help you to also take action and change your life for the better. So, a short history of me. As a child already, I was very interested in sound and in sound structures. I had this huge imagination where I would sit down, sometimes at the piano, sometimes just in my room, and imagine these sound worlds and these wonderful stories, narratives of sound that happened in my mind. But somehow, of course, I was studying sciences mostly in high school, and my father is a mathematics professor at university, or was. He's retired now. And so my intention was to go study engineering, civil engineering at university, where my father was actually also teaching the classes of mathematics. But then somehow the artistic impulse took over, and just before the final decision of going to study engineering, I decided to study music theory and composition instead. And then later on, I even added singing, which was a very, very strange thing for me. I never, ever imagined that that would have been my choice for like higher studies. So after my studies, I had a career as a musician, composer, and singer mostly. So I did that for pretty much 15 years. I was quite successful at it. I composed 2 operas that actually have been performed like in big opera houses. And I was on stage all over the world with some of the most respected musicians. I had an amazing time. I had wonderful, wonderful concerts, amazing memories with fantastic colleagues. It was really a very special kind of life, and I'm very, very grateful that that was something that I was able to do. So what changed at some point suddenly? Well, 2 things. One thing is the financial crisis of 2008 happened. And as it goes with financial crises, is that usually when countries have to save money, they cut funding for the arts first. So the funding for the type of music that I was doing, which was mostly early music and contemporary music, kind of disappeared very quickly. Concerts were canceled. A lot of my colleagues suddenly had no work. Some of the people that I was working with, the ensembles, the organizations, had a very difficult time to survive. Some of them just also just stopped working because there was no money from the government nor concerts anymore. So that was a very difficult period. And I kind of was observing this, and I saw that it was not great to be dependent on that for my only source of income. On the other hand, I was also going through kind of like a personal crisis, I could say, in the sense that I felt that my development as a human being, my development as an artist, as a performer, was kind of nearing its end. In retrospect, I probably think that that was not true, because there's always different stages of development that can happen. But at that time, I felt like I was kind of like, you know, I had written a couple of operas, I had performed all over the world with these world-famous musicians. What else was there to do for me? I felt maybe I wasn't able or willing to continue doing what I was doing at that point for like maybe 30 years in the future. And so I started considering, what else could I do? Then the very easy solution would have been to get a job somewhere, obviously, right? But that didn't feel right. I very quickly understood that getting a job somewhere was not for me. I wanted my independence, most of all. I sat down and I thought about, okay, what do I want my life to look like? And so that was the first time I actually started creating my own lifestyle, developing my life from the standpoint of like, if I could choose, what would my life look like? And the thing is, I could actually choose, right? So I developed these exercises in which I found my core values, and then I decided to build a business, to become an entrepreneur based on how I wanted to live and my core values. My core values, by the way, that are autonomy, integrity, and empathy. So I decided everything I wanted to do in my life had to be compatible with those core values. And I wanted to be in charge myself and make my own decisions. And I wanted to be wherever I wanted to be. So the thing that came up very quickly was like, okay, what is this thing called digital nomad? I read the book. I was reading voraciously at the time because I wanted new information. And I read the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I'm sure that quite a bit of you probably are familiar with that book. If you're not, check it out. It's worth a read for sure. It's a bit dated now. There's more interesting information out there, but it's a good starting point and it gives you some inspiration. It certainly inspired me because it gave me a completely different vision of what it meant to actually run a business. I had a broader sense suddenly of what was possible. And so I set out to create a business for myself that was not only compatible with my lifestyle desires, but also based on my core values. And so basically that I could decide for myself where to be and when to work at any point. Now, there's this kind of like bit of a joke when it comes to freedompreneurs or location independent entrepreneurs or digital nomads. Very often when you meet them, you will see that a lot of them are kind of into coaching. So there's a joke that the only possible way of being profitable as a freedompreneur is to teach other people how to be freedompreneurs, which is kind of ironic because that's kind of what I'm doing here, right? But I'm also here to tell you that it's not necessarily true, because the first thing that I did was very different. The first business that I created together with my very good friend Tine was called Vectoria Designs. Well, it still is called Vectoria Designs because the business still exists. We've been working on it for 5 years now, and we are still growing. We're going strong. We're actually planning on hiring some people for the first time in the coming year, and that's a very exciting place to be. And so this business, basically what we're doing is we are selling digital printable crafting graphics to people all over the world through the internet. It's a fabulous business model because, of course, it's a digital product, so the costs are very low. There is no production involved, there's no storage involved, there's not much logistics involved, and it's basically infinitely scalable. Whether we sell one design to some person or whether we sell 1 million designs to 1 million people, that doesn't really change anything to the way we run the business. So that model really inspired me to work on this. So what happened after that, when I was just doing that and started traveling around, and you know what happens when you start posting pictures of yourself on sunny beaches and the mountains in beautiful places. I popped up in Barcelona, I popped up in the south of Spain, I popped up in Madrid, I went to Portugal, I went to Italy, and like, you know, people started to think that something changed because people associate these kind of images with vacations, with holidays. So they thought I was on a permanent kind of holiday. So they started asking questions. They were like, Joachim, how do you manage this lifestyle? Did you win the lottery or something? And then I always replied, no, I didn't win the lottery. I just decided that this was the kind of life that I wanted to have. And then I'm figuring out how to create a business, how to build a business that supports that lifestyle, right? And in those conversations with people, I started understanding that what I was saying was more than just, you know, this is what I'm doing. I was actually giving them very valuable and helpful information about taking the steps to actually create this. I could certainly speak about, you know, all the things from making a business plan, marketing plan, financial plan, actually doing marketing, email marketing, building an email list, creating an e-commerce, all those things. I had this bunch of knowledge that I didn't have before. And when talking to people, people really found that very helpful. They started taking notes and asking me questions. So I kind of organically rolled into the role of being a business coach and a mentor for quite a few people before I started even thinking of making that into a business, which I'm doing now with StepUpLabs, obviously, after I met Elena in Barcelona last year. That actually was like a year ago, I think. Yeah. So that's nice. The next step for me is probably going to be to even more like create businesses with other people. I have a lot of experience now. I have some money to invest, so I'm looking to invest in other people to create some more businesses. I'm looking to diversify. I'm very much interested these days in things like community, because my location independent lifestyle is wonderful, but then how do you create community and foster community? And especially in the long term, you know, how do you handle communication? How do relationships with people work, both romantic and friendship relationships? And then I think a lot also about ethics, you know, ethical business, ethical communication, the way people treat each other, basically. So, okay, that's all great. That's a bit of my history. But then you're probably thinking, okay, this music thing, what on earth does that have to do with skill transferability and transparency? Well, I'm going to talk first about skill transferability. And again, I'm going to give you an example from my own life. I'm in Tokyo now, and as it happens, the story I'm about to tell also happened in Tokyo. It was more or less a year and 3 months ago that I was here for the first time. And I was here doing some international business development for a company from Ghent, wonderful little creative company that was making animated graphics, stop motion animation for communication and advertising. And so I came to Tokyo and I had a couple of meetings with these pretty big Japanese firms to try to actually sell them that product. And so at a certain point, I kind of just rolled with this. I was like, yeah, I want to try that. Why not? Let's do it. Let's see what happens. But then at a certain point, I went to visit this company called Tokyu, which is the 6th biggest communication company in Japan, which I didn't know at the time. But so I went to the address that they had given me. I was taken to somewhere like the 7th or 8th floor. And then they brought me into this room, a meeting room. And suddenly I felt like in a movie. This meeting room was huge. It was like one wall was completely made of glass with a beautiful look over the Tokyo skyline. There was a huge wooden table surrounded by these big, beautiful leather chairs. And on one wall, there was this huge, huge video screen for presentations. And I was just standing there slightly impressed. And then what happened then was even worse, because 7 people came in, like 7 Japanese business people, all with their briefcase and their laptops and their calling cards, including the president of that specific part of the organization that I was going to speak for. And they all sat down in one line at the table, on the other side of the table. And I was on the other side with a guy that I know who was going to translate. And I felt very, very weird. I was like, what am I doing here? How did I get from being on a stage singing 16th century polyphony to being in a meeting room with 7 Japanese executives trying to pitch this product? And then suddenly I had an epiphany. It hit me like, I know this. I know exactly what this is. This is not strange for me at all. This is a performance. I'm here, I'm the performer, I'm on a stage. These 7 people are my audience, and I have prepared a score, which was the presentation that I had, that I know well. So all I have to do is deliver my performance as I'm used to do. I know this situation. And then the thing is that I started thinking about my experience and my education as a performer. And the thing I remembered was this golden rule of performance, is that basically the audience always wants you to succeed. If you're a singer and you enter a concert hall with like 1,000 people that come there for you, and you probably feel bad about that, but the thing is that these people don't want you to fail. These people paid a lot of money for a ticket. They want to see you shine. They want to get something from you that inspires them. They want to see you at your best, you know. So the very positive vibe around being in an audience and looking at an artist is exactly what I felt in that moment in that meeting hall. These Japanese executives were investing a significant amount of their time that day to listen to me, not because they hoped I would fail miserably, but because they hoped that what I was going to tell them would be very valuable for them and for their corporation, so that they could create more value for their clients. And that simple insight really helped me to deliver a very good talk. So that's, in a way, that was the first time that I felt that any kind of skills that I had as a performer, as an artist, were actually useful in doing business. So I then, when Freedom X Fest asked me to make this talk, and they asked me to speak about music specifically, my background, I started thinking like, okay, I remember the situation in Japan, in Tokyo, in this meeting room. Are there any other skills that I have developed through a career as a performance artist and a composer that are actually helping me now in my life as an entrepreneur? And I made a list. And I was quite surprised because it's quite a list. So I'm going to go through the list now. I've learned as a performer, listening and sensing. And of course, that's key if you do business. If you're not able to listen to whatever it is that your business partner or your clients need, then you're not going to get far. I learned to create harmony and tension and resolution, because that's how music works. And actually also in dealing with people, and for me, business is all about human connection. You have to know how to deal with tension and resolution. You have to know when tension is maybe necessary to get somewhere, to get to a resolution. And you have to know that when others create tension, that there is always a way to get it back to harmony. I also learned by being an artist to get people on the same line, because if you're on a stage with 4 or 5 or 80 people, you have to find a way to get these people on the same line, to make them work for the same result. And that, of course, is very useful if you're running a business with a team. The idea is that you have to create your team in such a way that they all work for the result that you want, right? That they agree on something. So that's a very interesting and important skill that I learned as an artist as well. Then one of the big things for me is that I used to learn my voice and my breathing. And that's just so simple. That's something that most people never ever think about, right? And it's really funny because one of my first ever coaching clients came to me with the very strange problem that he was doing fine, except when he had a meeting with a very important client, he felt like he couldn't speak. And so I listened to his story and I gave him one very simple exercise, which was basically a breathing exercise. And I told him, next time you're in a meeting with a very important person, focus on your breath. And afterwards, he thanked me so much. He said it was magical, because what was happening and what I perceived when he was telling me what was going on is that he actually was blocking his own breathing. And of course, that's why he had the feeling he couldn't speak, because he actually wasn't physically able to speak. And when he started thinking about his breathing, he was able to speak with authority and sound and passion. And that actually helped him close the deal. What I also learned being an artist is to be comfortable in the spotlight. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, there are going to be moments where you have to be in the spotlight, like right now for me when I'm giving this lecture, or when you are in a meeting with 7 people listening to what you're having to say, or when you're giving like a public performance somewhere on a conference, who knows, you have to be able to comfortably be in the spotlight and to carry the attention of a lot of people. And that's, of course, something that artists are very used to. Related to that is that I learned to draw in the attention of people and also to hold their attention. You know, it's kind of like basic rhetorics, but when you're on a stage, you have to develop techniques to keep your audience engaged. Usually, of course, with the music, that's easy because the score kind of helps you, as the score is composed in a way that is supposed to do that. But when you're in a meeting or when you're speaking to people, when you're passionate about what you're creating as an entrepreneur, then you also have to have these techniques of holding people's attention and, well, catching it in the first place. Another thing I learned as an artist is gauging the emotional response of an audience. Because it's all very well if you're in a meeting, like a business meeting, and people are saying lots of things, it's all very well to hear what they're saying, but very often there's another level where, you know, people are feeling things and they may not be expressing them at the time. As a musician, obviously that happens all the time because you can't speak on a stage. You know, when you sit there with your colleagues and you're making the music, you have to use your emotional sensors because that helps you to create the music. And you can't say to each other like, hey, wait a second, you're going too fast, I don't feel comfortable with this, whatever. No, you have to feel that. So also in a meeting, you have to kind of like feel how people are emotionally, and then you can tap into that to make things happen. Another extremely important thing that I think most entrepreneurs never, ever, ever do, and that I would highly recommend, is something that I've learned, obviously, playing an instrument, is repetition as training, or the art of rehearsal. Musicians are used to rehearsing. You know, when we give a concert, when we're on a stage, we've probably done that for at least 2 or 3 times completely. How many entrepreneurs do you know who go into an important business meeting or an important talk have actually rehearsed what they are going to do and say at that point. Most of them have an idea, of course, and they prepared some kind of speech on paper, or maybe they have a presentation or something. But actually rehearsing it, like physically speaking, rehearsing, is something that I find immensely interesting and that helps me tremendously. And it's something that I also developed as a musician first. Another thing really important that I understood as a composer mostly is that you learn to question the status quo. Learning to question what everybody does and what is seen as normal is an essential skill for any kind of business or entrepreneurship. You have to be able to look at the world and go like, wait a second, why are we doing this like this? Is there maybe a better solution? Is there maybe a solution to something else somewhere that I can creatively adapt to this new problem? That is what entrepreneurship is mostly about. So the ability to question the status quo is essential. And obviously, as a composer, that's what you're trained to do. One final thing that I learned as a musician is understanding my role and supporting others in their role because of that. And that's maybe a bit counterintuitive. That's difficult to understand if you don't know what I'm speaking about. But when you're in a group of musicians and you're performing a piece, every voice in a piece has a certain role. Like sometimes your voice has the lead, you are the melody, the most important part. Sometimes maybe you're a bass part. Sometimes you're just an accompaniment. Sometimes you're an embellishment, an ornament, whatever. And if you don't understand your position, your place within the musical fabric, you're probably going to mess things up. So it's very important that at any point you know what you're doing, like what is my place? And how can I support the other people in finding their place? And I find that it's exactly the same in business. If you're not aware of what your role is in a meeting, in a company, in a team, in whatever you're involved in, then you're going to mess things up, because when you don't know what your role is, you can't actually support other people in their role. So you have to understand the dynamics of how roles work. Now, the greatest thing for me to gain insight in when I was making this list was that these skills all feel very authentic to me. They are part of who I am because I was a musician for such a long time. And people feel that when I use these skills in any kind of situation, they just feel genuine. And that is so important in business, I believe, being genuine and being authentic. Now, you're probably going to say, like, it's all very well, and that's wonderful for you, Joachim, but how does that actually apply to me? Well, understanding your own skills and being authentic with them, and then finding out that you have more skills than you think you do, is kind of the point of this lecture. So the second part, skill transparency. What do I mean with this? Well, I actually have great news for you. Whoever you are, if you're watching this, whatever it is you're doing, or whatever it is you have done in your life, you have a lot more skills than you realize. Wonderful, right? Now, I also have really bad news. The bad news is that you have no idea what those skills are, because those skills are completely transparent to you. Those skills are not obvious because you have had them for so long that you don't notice them anymore. And when you use them, they just seem natural and normal to you. There's nothing special about them. So you don't perceive them as skills, which is why you feel you maybe don't have many skills, but you do. I'm here to help you. So that's why I have written down 3 simple exercises to do in everyday life to help you find out what your skill set is and which skills you could actually use in your business or to create a business even. So it's very simple. Every time someone tells you that you are good at something, don't brush it off like what most people do, but write it down, because that is probably a skill that you have that you're not aware of. To you, this seems normal, but to the person giving you the compliment, they see it from a different perspective and they go like, wow, I know many people, but that specific thing that you do that better than anyone I know. So write that down. Another thing to write down is that every time you are surprised that someone else can't do something that you think is easy. We have it all the time, right? You see someone trying to do something and you go like, what's wrong with them? Why can't they do this simple thing? Everybody can do that. No, write that down, because that is a skill that you have. And because it's a skill you have, it seems that for other people, it should be easy too, but it isn't. Third thing, every time you see someone doing something and thinking, wait a second, I could do that better, write that down, because that too is probably a skill you have that you could use to create some value or to create some valuable product or service for someone else. So these are simple ways, simple exercises. It's more a question of awareness. It's a question of being mindful about what happens with you, what you're doing, and being mindful that the things you do that other people maybe can't do so well are actually very valuable. So write these things down and convince yourself that you have these hidden skills, these skills that are transparent to you, and those unlock your greatest potential, because these are your authentic skills that you can and should use in any kind of business, be it product or service that you create. The questions you have to ask yourself once you have this list of skills are very simple. How can I use these skills in other situations? How can I use these skills in business? Is there anything that is useful in dealing with my team or with clients or in trying to sell or in negotiating a better price for something? How can I actually use these skills to create or provide value to someone else? Because there could be a new business model there. There could be a new service or product that you can create by using a skill you already have and add it to whatever business you have to create a new product. And one final thing to think about is, how can I transfer these skills that I now have a list of to the different areas of my life? Because whether in relationships with people, or whether in business, or in friendships, or in the way you relate to yourself and your hobbies maybe, usually these areas of our lives have different skills that we don't necessarily transfer to the other parts of our life. If you consciously think about your skill set and learn to apply the skills you already have in one part of your life on problems that you have in another area, that might actually solve your problem. So I think that this will help you tremendously in building a new life if you have a clear view of what the authentic skills are that you already master. Now, before I finish with this talk, because I'm nearing the end, I'd like to leave you with a couple of questions. Actually, one question, but I have three things for you: a promise, a secret, and a question. The promise is really simple. Whatever you're doing, whatever you want to achieve, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to develop in your life, if you spend 30 minutes a day doing something, you will have amazing results. Consistently doing something for half an hour a day will change your life. Now, you may not get to the point that you were thinking of going, you may not develop the thing that you thought you were developing, but something will happen. Something will happen, and you may shift along the way, but you will achieve some interesting results. So whatever it is you want to try, creating a business, improving your life, whatever, it doesn't matter. Do something for half an hour a day in concentration, and it will change your life. A secret I have for you, which is very related to this idea of skills being transparent. A lot of people, when they first come to me, before they create a business, they know they want to change their lifestyle, they know they want to create a business, but they don't really have an idea maybe with what yet. And when I first ask them about, like, okay, what's your value proposition? Like, the most important part of any business is the value proposition. That's the core. They go like, yeah, I don't know what my value proposition is. I don't know if I have anything valuable to offer. Well, let me tell you, if in your life, if you have a job, or if you ever had any kind of job, you were creating value, right? The key is to understand that the amount of money that you were paid to do any kind of job is always smaller than the value you were creating. Think about that. That's how business works. If I would have a company and hire someone, and I pay them more than the value that they create for the business, I would go out of business. So any business that keeps on running where you work or worked always paid you less than the value that you created for them. That gives you perspective into the amount of value that you can create for someone. Even if you thought that you didn't have any skills or any valuable propositions, if you have ever had any kind of job, you were creating value. So if you have that in your mind, it's a great way to change the way you approach your mindset problem. Question for you, a very important question. Maybe you're at the point in your life when you feel like you need to make a change. You want to make a change in your lifestyle. You want to make a change in your job. Maybe you want to create a business. Maybe you want to become an entrepreneur. Maybe you even want to become location independent. But you have doubts. Things are holding you back. Fears are holding you back, because fear is always the thing we don't talk enough about. But it's kind of like one of the core problems that we all have, fear. Maybe you don't want to lose the security you have. Maybe the security you're feeling is even not really real. Maybe it's fake, but at least it's a known situation. So you're holding on to what is known. Maybe you're attached to a certain place, to certain people, to certain habits. And all these things are holding you back. Maybe you're thinking about the cost involved of changing your life. Like maybe you want to move and that involves cost. Maybe you want to create a business that involves cost. Maybe you want to hire someone to work with as a coach to help you create the business and to help you change your lifestyle, like what we do. And that comes at a cost, obviously. So you're afraid of all these costs, the cost of taking action, the cost of improving your life, because maybe you're not sure that the return on investment will be worth it. And this is what a lot of people go through when they come to us first. It's fear, and it's, well, the idea that these costs maybe are not worth it. But let me ask you this question. What if you rephrase that the other way around? What is the cost of not taking action? What is the cost of staying where you are? What is the cost of staying in a situation that you don't feel good about? What is the cost of not trying to create the life that you really want? What will happen down the road of your life? Where are you heading to? Is that a place that you like? Is that a place where you'll be happy? Think about that cost. Thank you for listening. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to quickly check if we have some questions, because I wasn't really looking at my Facebook feed. Let's see. I see some comments. Yes, Charlie said that it was 1 year exactly since we met. That is true. We met 1 year ago in Barcelona. Love you, Elena. Some nice comments. Thank you, Grace, for your lovely words, as always. Thank you. Very good question. So Anne is saying that I'm inspiring and that she often sees my Facebook posts and then she wonders what exactly I'm doing and how I'm actually making a living from that. So today's talk was very good for that. So, you know, now that I'm running a couple of businesses, and one of them is coaching and mentoring people to actually also create a life they really want, doing something they love. And that is what drives me, and I love it. It's wonderful. Let's see if I have any other questions. Oh, Kenny, really great. Thank you, Kenny, for that. So Kenny is saying that basically if they have big meetings, they do a dry run. They actually rehearse. They actually sit down with the presentation and go through with the team what they're going to say. And I love that. That's a great idea. So I'm very happy to see that some people are actually doing something like that out there. And yes, he's using his skills as a primary school teacher in that. Great, wonderful. And of course, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are actually already using the skills they have from previous careers or previous lives in their new business or job, whatever it is they're doing. But I think it helps nonetheless to be more aware of that and to maybe also do the exercise of sitting down, thinking about your skills, what the skills are, and how you can use them in your own situation. I think that's a really good exercise to do. Something else. Yes, Anne, thank you for that. Indeed. Question everything and stay critical about yourself and the world around you. I couldn't agree more. So important, not just in business, actually, but in life in general, just always ask yourself, why? Why is the most wonderful question. I remember as a child, I was very annoying because of why. I guess most children go through this phase of why, but I think I stuck in that phase a bit longer than was desirable for my parents. And very often now I find myself, if I'm in a difficult situation, I need to take a decision, I ask myself why, and I keep asking why, because going down the rabbit hole of whys is a very, very interesting exercise. But maybe that's another talk that I'll do some other time. I should do a TED talk. Yes, thank you, Sophie. That's wonderful. I would love to. If Ted is watching, please feel free to contact me. Okay, people, that's it, I think. No more comments, no more questions. So I'm going to head out into the Tokyo night and find some dinner, I think. Wonderful. For most of you, the day probably has just started. I hope you have a wonderful and lovely day. And I will see you here very soon. Remember to join our group if you want to. I will post the link for joining in the comments under this video. And anyone who joins the group can either have a 30-minute free session with me or with Elena, my business partner in StepUp Labs. And we can go through some of the issues that you're facing and see if maybe we could help you with that. Have a great day. Ciao.